Welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today we're continuing our playoff coverage of the NFL with the divisional round. Today we're talking Buccaneers and Lions. If you want to see my predictions for the other matchups for the divisional round, there's going to be a link in the description for that playlist. We have this one tonight, and then we're going to be making our last prediction for the divisional round tomorrow, which is the Chiefs-Bills. They play Sunday at 6:30. I'm glad that was the last game for the divisional round because it gives me more time to think about it. I really still to this day, like as of this moment right now, I still don't know who I'm picking in that Bills-Chiefs game. So stay tuned for that. We're going to do that tomorrow after the games. But for this matchup, this is a really interesting matchup. You just look at storyline, like these quarterbacks have very similar paths. They're both number one overall draft picks who were abandoned by the team that drafted them. Obviously, Baker took definitely a different path. He bounced around on a couple different teams last year, but ultimately two number one overall picks, no longer on the team that drafted them. And I think they both had great years, like career resurgence year for Baker. Jared Goff had his best statistical year. So I think that is a really fun storyline going into this one. Jared Goff, when he got to Detroit, I thought was going to be terrible. Like I saw what Goff did as a rookie with Fisher, and I thought, like, outside of McVay's system, Goff is not good, and he's not going to look good in Detroit. I thought it was going to be a mess. I thought both these guys were just done in terms of being starters in the NFL. And Baker, we said, kind of bounced around last year, was with McVay for a little bit last year, ends up in Tampa. And he actually called the Bucs. He reached out to the Bucs and asked if he could play there. The Bucs did not reach out to him, and he's had a career resurgence. Probably had his best season in the NFL. I mean, I really think you can make that case. And he's just really grown as a person on top of a player. I think Baker Mayfield is way more mature than he used to be in Cleveland. So let's take a look at the actual matchup, though, for this game. The Lions are favored here by 6.5. I was talking with a guy in the comments section of one of the other videos we did the other day about bets for the divisional round. And he was asking me about this game, and I said, honestly, like if you're going to bet this one, I am going to take the Lions. I do think the Lions are going to win this game, but I'd stay away from that spread. I said if you're going to put money on this game, my safest bet would be the Detroit Lions money line. I don't like the spread because I think it is going to be a close game. I could definitely see this being a shootout. I would think about hammering that over, although, like I said, I'm not betting this game. I'm not putting money on this game because I just think it could go either way. I think you can make a compelling argument for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game. When you look at the game plan that they had attacking the Philadelphia Eagles and beating them last week, and what was Baker Mayfield's probably the best game of Baker's NFL career was that game against the Eagles last week, having 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, being like all bandaged up from his ribs and ankles injuries, just a tough guy. Like I love to see shit like that. Baker looked great. And so, yeah, like I said, their game plan going into that game against the Eagles was incredible. Like, I don't think you could have drawn up a better game plan than what they did there. And I gave Bulls a lot of credit for that. I gave their offensive coordinator a lot of credit for that because they said, what's the Eagles' weakest point of their team? And they figured it out pretty quickly. It's their secondary. Their secondary is in shambles, you know? They couldn't tackle people. I mean, they were just going at the secondary. You could tell right off the bat very clearly what the Buccaneers were trying to do in that game, and it was working to a T. Like we said, Baker was great, and you're able to do that whenever you have a receiver core like Tampa has, with Evans and Godwin, I think is a top 5 wide receiver tandem in the entire league. And even Palmer, their rookie, had a great game as well. He had like a 52-yard touchdown. They were just going at the Eagles' corners who couldn't make plays. Darius Slay's banged up. James Bradbury, I think, is completely washed. I would be shocked if he's on an NFL team next year, just solely given how bad he looked in that game against Tampa. And this is the argument for Tampa in this game against Detroit is similar to Philly. They have a pretty questionable secondary as well. Now, you could say as a Lions fan to counter that as well, we got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back, who missed a large chunk of the year, which I think is a valid argument for sure, but it doesn't cover up the fact that overall the Lions secondary has been a massive question mark for the entire year. Like, I like their personnel. I like Cam Sutton being a Steelers fan. I was sad when he left. I like Brian Branch a lot. I think he's a stud from Bama, but overall, Like, the stats don't lie. Their secondary has been bad this year, and I think that is, if you're someone who's rooting for Tampa or putting money on Tampa, I think your biggest argument would be, well, look at what the Bucs did against the Eagles. Their game plan was to utilize their pass game and attack the Eagles' vulnerable secondary. And you could say the same argument could apply to Detroit, is their secondary is pretty, inconsistent as well. There's just a lot of unknown about it. I like their personnel, but the stats speak for themselves. They've just given up a lot of big plays, and if Baker plays as well as he did against Philly, I think the Bucs can definitely win this game. And this comes down to my final point, my final argument for this matchup and why I am picking the Lions. On top of the momentum, we get that. Detroit getting its first playoff win in 30 years. Tampa, of course, has a lot of momentum as well. But the biggest point is I want to look at the teams that these two defeated in Wild Card Weekend, because I think that kind of shows you how these teams are looking right now. Because Tampa, of course, they looked incredible. Like I said, Baker had probably the best game of his NFL career. The defense was awesome. Gave Bowles a lot of credit for that. But they were playing the most vulnerable team in the NFL. They were playing the Philadelphia Eagles in the midst of a complete and utter self-implosion. Structurally, organizationally, the Philadelphia Eagles just completely fucking fell apart this year. And we're going to make a lot of videos about it in the offseason, but to finish off the year 1-6, I told you guys they're the most vulnerable team going into the playoffs. I picked the Eagles in that game ultimately because I was like, well, I just think they're more talented than Tampa. I like Jalen a lot. I think they'll just figure it out. But that team looked like they just quit. And I think you're going to get a very different case with the Lions, who are playing their asses off. They would run through a brick wall for their head coach. And I just don't think you were getting that type of team with the Eagles. And looking at who the Lions defeated in Wild Card Weekend, the LA Rams, Jared Goff's former team. And the LA Rams were probably the hottest team going into the playoffs. You could argue the Bills, but I honestly think the Rams were the hottest team entering the playoffs. They won 7 of their last 8 games, and that one loss came against the Baltimore Ravens in a shootout and that went to overtime. So they easily could have won that one. So it's I thought the Rams, they had a lot of momentum. They had a top 3 head coach, McVay. And the Lions felt like this would have been a game they lost because of the momentum I just brought up. Because I felt like they had not only the head coach advantage with McVay over Campbell, but I also thought quarterback, I trust Stafford more in these big moments. And that's why I took the Rams. But I was wrong because the Lions, they showed up to play. Goff was perfect. I said Goff has a tendency in these big games to kind of shrink. That didn't happen. He was awesome in that game against the Rams. And ultimately, that is the reason why I like them more over Tampa. And you got to keep in mind, I like Tampa's roster a lot. I like Baker. I like how they're playing. I think their team is kind of underrated just because last year they were really disappointing. However, this was a team not that long ago. We didn't even know if they were going to be in the playoffs. You got to keep that in mind when you look at this matchup. A couple weeks ago, we didn't even know Tampa was going to be a playoff team. And ultimately, when they match up against one of the best rosters in the NFL, which is the Detroit Lions, I think that's going to show. And also, they played earlier in the year, and the Lions bludgeoned the Buccaneers as well. So, all that being said, I'll probably be wrong about this as well. I only went 3-3 in Wild Card Weekend, but I definitely want to get your guys' take on this. I would stay away from betting this game. If you had to, I would go Detroit money line. I don't like that spread at all. So, like I said, let me know your thoughts on this game. If you made it this far, really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe.